Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing my battles from the Clash of Casters tournament, a Show 6 Pick 3 style Pokemon Go Invitational tournament where casters, instead of casting, actually get to compete. The field in this tournament is an incredibly stacked one, with multiple former regional champions and battlers who've made it to #1 in the world on the global leaderboards, so I'm going to have a tall task ahead of me. To start with, I'm going to showcase the team that I used, and then we'll go through the tournament round by round. A lot of the time in tournaments like these, I try and run something anti-meta, try and find something interesting that can potentially core break the meta. But today, I'm evening the playing field. I'm seeing what I can do if I try hard and I run a strong meta team. So I'm running Shadow Gligar, Vigoroth, Cresselia, Water Gun Lantern, Feraligatr Non-Shadow, and Charjabug. My first round opponent, Lou the Pikachu, is running Medicham, Spark Lantern, Umbreon with Foul Play and Dark Pulse, Altaria, Shadow Charm, Alolan Ninetales, and an interesting choice of Mudboy, Gastrodon. Right off the bat, Cresselia looks amazing for me, but the 2-shield Shadow Charm Alolan Ninetales looks very good for her, as it can beat my entire team in the 2-shield. So I think I have to try and run Pokemon that are as flexible as possible. So for game number 1, I'm going to opt for Cresselia since it's my best Pokemon, Charjabug since it has a lot of neutral play, and Vigoroth for the same reason. The leads are set, and it's a great lead for me in game 1 as Cresselia is going to find a good matchup versus the Lantern. I'm just going to look to massively overfarm here, wait the turn to make sure she's not able to catch, and fire off the Grass Knot. Grass Knot shielded up, so she is looking to protect this Lantern. I don't have to match shields here though, because I know that I can survive the charge attack. Surf is going to connect, there's a switch into Altaria, and this is why I wanted to lead Cresselia. Cresselia is so strong into her team. I landed the Moonblast, and now I can send in Vigoroth. Vigoroth can survive the charge attack, so I am going to let this through. I was worried if I shielded, there could potentially be a Medicham in the back, and then Medicham getting a ton of energy farming down the Vigoroth would be a bit problematic. She ends up shielding the Body Slam, trying to make it to another charge attack, but Vigoroth is just far too spammy. Making it to Body Slam number 2, picking up the KO. In the back is that Shadow Charm Alolan Ninetales, but without shields to hide behind, it is significantly less scary. And now I can just commit the shield, and Charjabug is in a terrific position. I'm going to throw 2 Volt Switches, as it is going to be good charge attack timing, and throw after 8 turns when her 9th turn is about to conclude. In comes the Lantern, and a combination of an X-Scissor plus a Grass Knot will be able to win me this game. So I can land that X-Scissor. X-Scissor doesn't quite put the Lantern into Grass Knot range, but it's pretty close. So now I can just switch into the Cresselia, couple more Psycho Cuts, and Grass Knot should just about do it here. So I will fire off the Grass Knot to the Lantern, Grass Knot, plus it looks like 1 additional Psycho Cut will be able to pick up the KO, and I'm able to take the game 1 win. Game 1 honestly couldn't have gone better. Cresselia was a massive core breaker on the lead, and that really allowed me to dictate how the rest of the game went, and with proper alignment, the team was able to cruise to a comfortable victory. For game 2, I am predicting an adjustment. I'm predicting that the Umbreon will be brought, as Umbreon is her best check-in at the Cresselia. So I'm going to run my same line of 3, but I'm going to adjust it to put Vigoroth in the lead, as I am predicting an Umbreon lead. I lead Vigoroth for game number 2, and it's not into the Umbreon, it's into a Lantern. My goal here is I'm just going to bank some energy and send in Cresselia. Even if the Umbreon gets brought in here, I'm up energy, so I can still inflict some nice damage. But it's no Umbreon, it's a Thunderbolt from the Lantern. I'm going to farm watching for a potential catch, and there it is! The switch to the Altaria. Cresselia again core breaking, it's just so strong into this team. The Moonblast is able to connect, and that does substantial damage. Cresselia is able to overfarm ever so slightly and fire off another Moonblast. We are going to see the shield from the Altaria. Altaria firing off energy. I have a choice to make here. I could choose to potentially shield, but I say, you know what? Cresselia has done its job. I can send in the Vigoroth. Vigoroth, again, can massively overfarm, and then just fire off the Body Slam to pick up the KO. In the back, it's going to be the Ninetales, so it's not actually the Umbreon. I was a little bit seeing ghosts there. She does make a nice bait call, correctly reading that I'm only going to go for the Body Slam, but I still do have just a very straightforward win con in this game. I'm just going straight Body Slam. I'm going to let myself get as much damage as I possibly can, and then send in the Charjabug. Charjabug is going to be shielding up the Weather Ball, and Charjabug can't quite get the Volt Switch farm down as she's able to preserve the Ninetales on low HP and send in the Lantern. But it's just bad news for the Lantern as the Charjabug has a massive energy advantage, firing off X Scissor after X Scissor. The Lantern survives on 1 HP, making it to one final Surf, but Charjabug gets the farm down of the Lantern, and shortly thereafter the Ninetales as well, and I'm able to take the 2-0 round 1 victory. My round 2 opponent is TZ Spence, a trainer who has made it to the global leaderboards on over 10 different seasons. And he's running Charjabug, Azumarill, Skarmory, Vigoroth, Shadow Gligar, and Shadow Whiscash. Right off the bat, Water Gun Lantern looks amazing into his team, so that's what I lead in game number 1. And to my surprise, I lead into a Skarmory. I was sure he wouldn't bring the Skarmory with how strong my Lantern was, but my Lantern gets an amazing lead. He safe switches into Vigoroth. I can throw a bunch of Water Guns, and this damage is actually very valuable, and then send in the Cresselia. Because since I got that fast move damage, now this is in a range where I can knock it out with 2 Grass Knots, which is honestly amazing for me. I don't even really need Switch advantage, so if he's willing to fight for Switch, I will happily give up Switch, because again, he doesn't have a good check to Water Gun Lantern. Anytime your best check to a Water Gun Lantern is a Shadow Whiscash, you don't realistically have a good check to Water Gun Lantern. So I will be firing off this Grass Knot. The Grass Knot does get shielded, and at this point, I'm more than happy to let the Cresselia go. I don't really want to shield, try and make a play for Switch, and let Skarmory get energy. Instead, I would rather go for energy of my own. I send in the Vigoroth, I get the full counter down, he does not make the move. In comes the Skarmory, but Skarmory is down a ton of energy, and it's down a shield. The Steel Wings will add up, but he cannot farm me down. The Rock Slide is going to connect. I'm just going to shield and keep farming. I'm going to counter this into a range where a Rock Slide will be enough to KO. So I'm going to farm up just shy of the back-to-back Rock Slides. Rock Slide into the Skarmory. Is he willing to shield? Yes, but Vigoroth is going to make Rock Slide number 2 winning charge attack priority. That knocks Skarmory out of the sky. In the back, it is going to be the Shadow Whiscash, and this game is over. I fire off the Body Slam. Body Slam is going to be able to do some very nice damage. The quick switch to the Lantern, and Lantern is not phased by Shadow Mud Bomb. The Shadow Mud Bomb will connect, but Lantern is able to withstand that damage and make it to the Surf. Surf is going to be getting rid of just about the remainder of the HP of the Whiscash, and I'm able to take game number 1. Leading Skarmory into a Lantern is an incredibly irritating feeling, so I'm expecting my opponent is not bringing back the Skarm lead in game 2. Therefore, I'm going to run a line that's very weak to Skarm lead. The Gligar on the lead and Cresselia in the back. And the leads are set, and I get the prediction correct. That's not a Skarmory, that's a Charjabug lead, which is amazing for me. Vigoroth safe switch, I can always stay in here and fire off the Aerial Ace because Switch takes a turn, so I can outpace. The Aerial Ace will connect, I can send out Cresselia, and the ABA strategy proves to be an incredibly successful one, as Vigoroth is now in an absolute nightmare position where Cresselia can massively overfarm and pick up a knockout. So the Body Slam is going to connect. I'm going to overfarm, and here I do get a little bit greedy. I go for the Grass Knot. A Moonblast would have just knocked out, but a Grass Knot doesn't actually KO, and it does mean that Vigoroth is able to make it to another Body Slam. So I will exit with more energy, which is a little bit nice. I'm going to throw 3 Psycho Cuts and fire off the Moonblast. Moonblast will be able to do some nice damage onto that Charjabug. Charjabug now going to be hit with Moonblast number 2. This will not KO, but they're losing basically all their HP on this Pokemon. I send in Gligar in the back. It's the Shadow Whiscash, and Gligar up energy is going to be able to do a tremendous amount of work here. This matchup is made so much better by the fact that Scald went from a 50% debuff chance to a 30% debuff chance. The Scald into the Gligar. Gligar does actually get debuffed. I take it all back. The 30% does happen, and now my attack is doing a lot less than it typically would, but I get a catch, catching the Scald onto that Lantern, and that's just heartbreaking for my opponent. Oh my goodness, that is so rough. Mud Bomb is going to connect. It still does not KO. Lantern firing off the Surf into the Whiscash. Whiscash barely hangs on. Charjabug gets the farm down. It has a lot of energy, but not enough HP. They only get off 1 X Scissor. Wing Attack KOs the Charjabug and the Whiscash, and I move to 2-0 in the tournament with a 2-0 victory. My next opponent is Softoph, a trainer who has made the global leaderboards each of the past 15 seasons and has climbed as high as number 3 in the world. And we are running nearly identical teams. 5 of our 6 are the same, but I have Watergun Lantern and she has Shadow Quagsire. The leads are set for game number 1. I go with my neutral lead of Vigoroth, and she actually does as well. So this lead matchup is basically entirely determined by who wins charge attack priority. I'm going to be firing off the Body Slam. This will not be enough to KO, but it does a significant amount of damage, and she decides to no shield. I can survive this charge attack, so I am going to let this through, and then I am going to be firing off the Body Slam. She's actually going to save her Vigoroth for later, saving a Body Slam as she makes a catch onto Cresselia. And my best option is going to be to mirror and send in my own Cresselia. So far, we've had very similar ideas for how to approach this matchup, which makes quite a bit of sense considering we are almost running the exact same line of 6. Now, Soph's line of 6 is the line that Out of Pocket was able to use to win the North American International Championships. I kind of used that as a starting ground, but realized that I thought that a lot of teams would potentially be weak to Watergun Lantern, so I decided to make the switch, leaving Quagsire on the bench. My opponent, however, did not bring the same third Pokemon. They brought Charjabug, and as someone who brought Gligar, I am incredibly happy to see this. Her Charjabug is on X-Scissor and Discharge, which means it is entirely walled by Gligar. Gligar, I felt, just offered a lot of neutral play in this matchup, as even against something like the Quagsire or the Feraligatr, if you're able to be up energy, you still have a lot of play there. So I tried to run as neutral as I possibly could, and it ends up working out for me as we have 2 of the 3 the same, but the third ends up being a really good matchup for Gligar. The Aerial Ace will be shielded, going down 2 shields to do so, and now I do have a choice to make. I will commit the shield. She has a second move, so I catch it on the 1 HP Vigoroth, and that's absolutely going to seal the game. The game was already looking pretty good, but now it's basically just over. I can survive a move here from her Cresselia. She goes for the Grass Knot. Grass Knot is survivable. If it was a Moonblast, I think it would have knocked out, but I still had energy on the Gligar, and that's still just winning for me. In comes the Vigoroth. She knows that she needs to try and counter down to win, and unfortunately is unable to do so. 1 wing attack from the Gligar, and I'm able to take game number 1. I still have yet to lose even a single game in this tournament, and I feel like a massive key to success has been just trying to run as neutrally as I possibly can in the game number 1. So even if I don't get what I'm expecting to see on the lead, I still have play around that even if I don't have switch advantage. For game 2, however, being up a game, I feel like I can take some risks. Quag wasn't brought game 1, so I'm going to run ABA weak to it with Gligar on the lead and Charjabug in the back to try and catch potentially a Cresselia. So the leads are set for game number 2 here. Gligar into Quagsire and disaster strikes. I'm caught ABA weak. I have to stay in this lead. Although, despite the type disadvantage, Gligar can actually still do decently here. Because Aqua Tail does a ton, but my opponent can never farm down. I'm going to farm up past the dig and bait with the Aerial Ace. The Aerial Ace bait is successful, and I grab a shield from the Quagsire. Quagsire going to be firing off another Aqua Tail. I will commit the shield, and then build back up to the dig. I decide to double shield because a no-shielded Aerial Ace is less bad for me than a shielded dig. My opponent is going to no-shield the Aerial Ace there, and I'm just going to shield up because I think I can farm down here. And the wing attack does KO, and I win switch. And there's the Cresselia I was hunting for with the Charjabug. This is really nice. I go for the dig that is able to connect. My Gligar is going to farm up, making it to another dig, and I didn't see a Psycho Cut go through, so it appears that's a CMP tie as well. Oh, that is really, really good for me. Normally, I'd bring Charjabug into Cresselia, but it's low enough that I can just bring in the Vigoroth here. And with Vigoroth, I can just go for the Body Slam on charge attack priority, which means that my opponent has to shield if they want to land this Grass Knot. They let it go. In the back is Charjabug, and this game is over. The correct play in this instance is always to build up to the Rock Slide and go for the Body Slam. A no-shielded Body Slam is less bad than a shielded Rock Slide, so I go for the Body Slam, I do get the shield, and then I can throw one counter and then switch into the Charjabug. That's a little bit of underrated tech there because Switch is going to take a turn anyway. So if we're going to be desynced, I may as well throw a counter first and then switch. The nice thing about the Charjabug mirror is if your opponent has taken some damage, 2 X-Scissors can actually KO, whereas 2 X-Scissors don't KO me, and my opponent has to throw a third. So they are going to be able to pick up the knockout with the X-Scissors since her Charjabug wins charge attack priority over mine, but I can just make it to the Body Slam. Body Slam KOs the Charjabug. We take the 2-0 win, and I'm now 3-0 in this tournament. My next opponent is Inadequence. Inadequence is a former regional champion, a frequent leaderboarder having peaked at number 2 in the world, and a fellow content creator. And like myself, he's not only 3-0 through 3 rounds, but he also, like me, has not lost a game, going 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 across those rounds. His team is a unique one. Giratina Origin, Vigoroth, Cresselia, Azumarill, Wigglytuff with Icy Wind and Swift, and Talonflame. 2-Shield Wigglytuff could be difficult here. I am as well a little bit worried about Azumarill, as Azumarill's bulk could prove to be problematic for some of the neutral Pokemon that I love to use, like Shadow Gligar and Vigoroth. I think it over for a while, and I decide a Talon lead is unlikely, so I'm going to lead Cresselia in game number 1. The leads are set. My Cresselia into his Azumarill, an amazing lead. He's going to save switch into Vigoroth, and I've caught him ABA weak to Cresselia. This is absolutely terrific. Vigoroth fires off the Body Slam. I'm going to return fire with the Cresselia as I go for the Grass Knot. Grass Knot is going to connect, and now I can send in my own Vigoroth. I should, I think, be able to counter all the way down here. It'll be a little bit close, but I think that I can tank this, counter all the way down, and he will fall just short of making it to a move. In comes the Azumarill. I'm not going to get to 3 moves here, so I'm going to settle for a Body Slam plus a Rock Slide. Rock Slide is the less efficient move, but it does do incrementally more damage. So I will go for the Rock Slide as well, and Azumarill will get the bubble down. I'm going to be waiting my timer. I brought the Feraligatr in the back to potentially hunt for Cresselia, but in the back, Disaster strikes. That is not a Cresselia. That's a 2-shielded Wigglytuff. I go for the Grass Knot. He no shields, and I send in Feraligatr. Feraligatr is uniquely poor against Wigglytuff because of that Ghost subtyping. I can do no fast move damage here. If I don't make it to 3 Hydro Cannons, I'm in trouble. It looks like I do live 2 more charms, so this will potentially come down to new mechanic. Can I get there? I cannot. I faint with the Hydro Cannon. I don't get the new mechanic. And with that, I'm going to suffer my first loss in any game of this tournament. The 2-shielded Wigglytuff, just too much for me to handle. And Inadequence will take the 1-0 lead. Losing game 1 definitely has me down, but I am not out of it. This is a best of 3 series, and I am going to have to make some adjustments if I want to get the equalizer here in game number 2. Feraligatr, I thought looked pretty decent into his team, but it felt pretty helpless against the 2-shielded Wigglytuff, so I'm going to make an adjustment here. I'm going to bench the Feraligatr, and instead, I'm bringing Charjabug, a Pokemon that can still potentially target Cresselia, but as well has some pretty decent matchups into the Azumarill Vigoroth core that he brought in game number 1. So, the stage is set. Vigoroth on the lead, Charjabug in the back, and we actually have a mirror here, Vigoroth versus Vigoroth. My team was a little bit ABA weak to Azumarill, but after he led Azumarill game 1, I didn't think he'd do it in game 2, so I feel pretty okay with the fact that I'm not seeing the Azu here. Vigoroth versus Vigoroth, it'll come down to a charge attack priority tie. My opponent makes a catch, catching onto Azumarill, and oh boy, this is Charjabug's time to shine. I can send in the Charjabug. He has a very unique choice when it comes to Azumarill moveset. He is not running Ice Beam. He's running Play Rough and Hydro Pump, which means that his pacing is very, very slow. And this means that I can just shield once, farm all the way down, and as I look across his team sheet, unless he has a Giratina in the back, I should just have this game won. My energy is too valuable, and it's not Giratina, it's Wigglytuff. And up this much energy, we are going to see Charjabug go on a rampage. The correct timing is throwing 2 Volt Switches and the move, which I do back-to-back times, so that way I can make sure to not give my opponent any unnecessary free turns. Now here, I'm just going to throw 1 in the move, because if I threw 2, the charm damage would knock me out. But look at how much value I just got out of that Pokemon. That's absolutely amazing. I can commit the shield on the Icy Wind, and now I just have to overfarm and just throw it a weird time so he can't catch. So I am going to throw at not the most optimal time, but I wanted to be unpredictable there so he couldn't catch. The Aerial Ace is going to pick up the KO. Vigoroth left with a slam. They're going to be able to make it to a Rock Slide, but Rock Slide does not come close to KOing here. Gligar able to tank that no problem, and I did it. I got the equalizer, and we're going to a game number 3. My Charjabug was too good in game number 2. I think he has to bring the Giratina in game number 3. So I'm going to bench the Charjabug and try and run as neutral as I possibly can to try and take home this win. And I get a good lead. Cresselia versus Vigoroth. This is terrific. However, he's staying in this lead, and that is not a good sign for me. Him staying in the lead means that he could have that Azumarill in the back, and my back line is very weak to Azumarill. I'm going to farm up and fire off the Moonblast. Moonblast does get shielded, as unfortunately he does get the shield call right. This Vigoroth putting in a decent amount of work against my Cresselia. The Body Slam will connect. I return fire with the Moonblast, and I need to switch out of here into the Vigoroth to potentially bait out an Azumarill. So I send in the Vigoroth. Vigoroth will be able to get a farm down of my opponent here if they stay in. They can't make another move, so they're going to be forced to switch. And then they do. In comes Azumarill, and my Gligar is very happy that this does get baited out. I'm going to fire off Body Slam after Body Slam into this Azumarill, trying to get as much damage as I possibly can. I don't think my opponent can bubble me down here, but then, as I see my health get lower, I realize they can. This is a similar situation to game 1. I'm 4 away, but 3 bubbles KO. But this time I get the move. I get the new mechanic, and that is a dramatically game-altering turn of events as he's forced to give up his final shield. And now I just have a 2-shield Gligar versus whatever's in back. Play Rough lands. I get myself as low as possible. In comes the Vigoroth. Vigoroth is able to make the move, and I will commit the shield. And Gligar up energy should just be winning for me here. What is that final Pokemon? Is it going to be the Giratina, or is it the Wigglytuff? Those are my 2 predictions, and there it is, the Giratina trying to hunt down the Charjabug, but I did not bring it. I fire off the dig, and the moment I do, I realize I can't farm down after. I think I needed 2 Aerial Aces. Then I go for the Aerial Ace. I lose charge attack priority. I shield it, and I shield a bait. Oh no. This endgame was winning, but it's turning out of my control. I go for the catch. I fail the catch, and I'm getting hit with a move. And a misplay of that Gligar vs Giratina matchup means that by the narrowest of margins, I lose 2-1 versus Inadequence. Man, that was a heartbreaking loss. I was in a completely winning position, but unfortunately, I didn't know the details of the Gligar-Giratina matchup, and the misplay ends up costing me the match. To be fair, if I didn't get new mechanic with my Vigoroth versus the Azumarill, I would have been in a losing position, and Inadequence probably would have won that game. But either way, in a winning position, I should be able to convert. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to. My final round opponent is actually my casting duo, Alpha Phoebe, who's running a very difficult team for me. Whimsicott, Feraligatr, Shadow Magnezone, Reggie, Shadow Quagsire, and Shadow Gligar. This team, I definitely feel, has an advantage over mine, so this is going to be a tough game. I lead Vigoroth in game number 1, and I lead it into Shadow Quagsire. This is a pretty good matchup. Vigoroth wins the 0 shield and the 2 shield. I do lose the 1s, but as long as we don't play to the 1s, then I'm in a pretty okay spot. So the Body Slam is going to be fired. He no shields, and this is honestly great for me. I know that I can win the 0s here, so I am just going to let this through, and I can overfarm ever so slightly and fire off the Body Slam. Now this way, if he wants to shield, I can aggressively switch into the Gligar and farm him down, but instead, he's just going to let it go and send in Whimsicott. Whimsicott going to take a lot of damage from Body Slam. Whimsicott is very frail, and now I can send out the Gligar. Gligar going to be hit with a Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb doesn't do a ton of damage to Gligar, and in the back, it's Magnezone. Magnezone, a pretty scary Pokemon for my team to see. I build up past the dig, bait with the Aerial Ace, get the shield, and in comes Charjabug. One of my reasons for bringing Charjabug was specifically because it's one of the few things on my team that can actually comfortably survive a Wild Charge. So that's why I very comfortably no-shield that first move. It ends up being a Mirror Shot bait, and this one ends up being a Mirror Shot bait as well, because I just wasn't in a range where Wild Charge will KO. So I can fire off the X-Scissor. That does a lot of damage. I can go for X-Scissor number 2, and now my opponent has to shield, or they risk losing the Magnezone. They shield. They're going to send out the Whimsicott. Whimsicott will fire off energy, and I still just do not have to shield this. I can win this game with Gligar. I'm going to save that energy, send in the Gligar. Gligar can shield once, farm all the way down, and leave with the dig. So after the heartbreak that was round 4, the good news is we are back to our good old reliable getting the game 1 victory here. We ended up with a pretty decent lead considering my backline was pretty weak to the Quagsire, and from there, we're able to convert and take the win. If I want to finish on the podium of this tournament, top 3, I'm going to have to win this final round. A 3-2 finish is not going to be good enough for top 3, so I'm going to need to win one of the next 2 games. Game 2 is often the game where I take risks, and I want some redemption for Feraligatr, so I'm putting Feraligatr on the team, and I'm going to lead with Gligar. Game 2, we actually have mirror leads Gligar versus Gligar. This is not bad at all. It does mean, unfortunately, that one of the targets for Feraligatr is not going to be aligned onto that Feraligatr. I land the Aerial Ace, which is quite nice. I'm going to farm up a ton of energy, but look right there. I frame drop and I get denied. I should have an Aerial Ace here and be able to CMP tie, but I'm 1 behind because the game lags. That is really bad. I shield at the absolute last second. I'm going to overfarm as much as I can. I should have back-to-back here, but I'm 1 short because the game lagged. So I will go for the Aerial Ace. He's just going to let it go. The question will be, what will he send in here to absorb this energy? I should be able to make it to an Aerial Ace for just about anything that comes in, and it is going to be the Quagsire. So I'm going to fire off the Dig. Dig would do massive damage. He will commit the shield. I can make it to the Aerial Ace. He is going to CMP tie there. Unfortunately, if I didn't get denied, I could have made the Aerial Ace before he threw his move, but either way, he has energy. I don't really want to take it on the Vigoroth, so I'm going to send in Feraligatr, as this way I can guarantee it's not Feraligatr on the Magnezone. He goes for the Stone Edge. It's Whimsicott in the back, and I quickly switch into the Vigoroth. This endgame has a lot of moving parts. It's going to be a difficult one. Whimsicott can come pretty close to 2-shotting with Seed Bomb here, but I can survive the move no matter what, so I let it through. He fires off the Moonblast. Moonblast does a ton of damage, and then I'm realizing that he actually doesn't want to win this matchup. He would prefer to soft lose it. I go for the Body Slam. He lives out on 1, and here he's going to attempt to go for a Seed Bomb undercharge. The Seed Bomb, even undercharged, still KOs, and that means this game is just a win, because Feraligatr is going to get the double up before Quag gets the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Quag's pacing is elite, but with the residual energy on Feraligatr, I get not 1, but 2 Hydro Cannons, and we are going to be able to secure the 2-0 victory, and thus ends the Clash of Casters tournament. And now that the tournament's over, let's talk about the results and how did I do overall. Well, in my battles, I won 4 out of the 5 rounds. The only loss was to Inadequence, where I did lose 1-2, and the rest of the battles, I was able to win with 2-0 victories. So with 4 wins and 1 loss in the rounds, and a total match score of 9-2, how did that stack up across the entire tournament? With the final standings reveal, I place 2nd in the Clash of Casters tournament. I'm honestly absolutely thrilled with this result. This was a stacked field featuring many regional champions, some top GBL leaderboarders, and otherwise just some incredibly talented Show 6 battlers who we've seen continually top cut. So against a field like that, being able to get 2nd place is something that I'm thrilled about. I definitely feel I could have played better in the matches versus Inadequence. In game 1, I just really didn't consider Wigglytuff a threat. I was more worried about Cresselia, and the 2-shield Wigglytuff ended up being a bit too much for my Feraligatr to handle. And then, unfortunately, in Game 3, I definitely threw a bit as well, but overall, I'm very happy with the result, and there's a lot to learn. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.